Pat, let's take some calls. Let's go to Tracy in Georgia. Tracy, what's your question for Pat and me?
Hey, Pat. Thanks for taking my call today.
Sure.
Again, I'm Tracy. I'm from Southwest Georgia, and I'm the founder and owner of several healthcare businesses. And we have approximately 125 employees, 7 of which report directly to me. And my question today is around entitlement. So we work hard to gain the buy-in of our team to be inclusive. But how do you manage that if you start to see some of the entitlement behaviors that often occur with that?
Give me an example.
Well, so we're a small organization. We've been together for a very long time. Sometimes, especially I see it mostly around compensation and developing compensation packages. We want it to be inclusive. We want it to be incentive-driven. We want to be able to share our profit. And sometimes they have a tendency to advocate for themselves, especially on the compensation side, more than what we as seeing the bigger picture can allot for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of my answers to people that do that kind of stuff is your raise is effective when you are. And so, sure. People get paid for the revenue they produce or the expenses they help us avoid. They get paid what it costs to replace them. And so if you've got someone that's doing a certain job and you can replace them for that amount, that's the market value of that position. Anything that they get above that is due to their personal production, or it's due to your generosity in your bonus program or something like that. And you can't, you can create a culture where incentive is rewarded, but you can't create a culture that no one ever gripes. That never happens. So I mean, what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't tolerate it in mass. I would have some individual discussions behind closed doors on something like that. But I'm not sure exactly what you're struggling with. But that's a couple comments. What are you thinking?
Well, one thing because I run a small business too, although yours is bigger than mine. I mean, I have a small consulting firm, but people adjust to their wages going up or their compensation going up very quickly. And they start to go, okay, that's my new baseline. And sometimes they need to be reminded of what they have. And right. as a leader, I don't like to do that because, boy, I love to be generous and I love to tell people when they're doing a great job. And the last thing I want to do is have to tell a strong performer that they're actually well paid. And yet that's my job because otherwise I might be creating that entitlement. And let me tell you, Tracy, I'm an entitlement creator. The people that work with me know, like, Pat, it's your own fault because you reward people well and then they get used to it.
Yeah.
One of the things we did, Tracy, early in our company is we decided we were going to pay people relatively low base salaries and pay them handsomely in terms of bonuses. And their total compensation always exceeded what they would have gotten someplace else. But from the very beginning, we said, we want you to live as though this is what you're making, and we want you to be happy and surprised. But I will tell you something, that doesn't work anymore for me. We've realized that oftentimes people will look at whatever metric, like my base salary or something like that, and they'll compare whatever metric doesn't work out well for them. And then they'll come and say, well, I need my base salary raised. And so I have to keep going back and saying, well, let's look at your total compensation. Let's look at the non-monetary parts of your compensation, about the flexibility you have and the other things you can do. And I always felt bad, like I was having to be defensive, but that's actually in their best interest. So they can go home and say to their spouse, actually, honey, I'm really well paid, and I just didn't realize it. So
right. I'm glad to hear you say that because that is a struggle. You do feel like you're on the defense when they're coming to you and they don't feel like they've been rewarded appropriately. It automatically puts you on that defense. And we're in South Georgia. The compensation here is sometimes much lower than the rest of the state of Georgia. And so we work really, really hard to be competitive with our packaging. And I hear you say that reminding is not a bad thing.
Not at all. And I don't know about you, Tracy, but if you're a humble human being, the last thing you'd ever want to be accused of is being cheap. Like when I go out to dinner with people, I'm like, I'm going to pay more than my fair share. I just might want to pay the whole thing just because I don't want anybody to ever think I'm being cheap. Okay, Dave, I'm going out to dinner with Dave tonight. But I never use that with Dave Ramsey because he said that would be a bad financial decision. But so the thing is, when somebody comes to you and they said, I think I might be underpaid, right away I kick into, oh no. They might think I'm taking advantage of them or I'm lining my own pockets at their expense, and all of my defense mechanisms go up. And what we need to do is go, no, wait a second. We know our intention isn't that. Let's go back and take an honest look at this and then sit down and remind them.
Yeah, so Tracy, there's 2 or 3 things there that come up. Number one, if it is exposing an attitude of I am here for what I can get rather than I'm here for what I can add.
Yes.
If it's exposing that attitude, the conversation at Ramsey will be pretty short because that's just your opportunity to leave. Because it's, we're exposing I'm here for what I can take. But if instead the person is coming and saying, hey, help me understand this because I feel like I'm trying to do all the right stuff and I feel like I'm not being paid right. Okay, let's check on that.
Yeah, and
if you come at it with that attitude, I'll work with anybody from now on, and I'm not mean. But if there's a level of, belligerence or passive-aggressive belligerence in the questioning, then now you're starting to almost question our honor, our intent, or our integrity, and we're kind of done talking at that point. It's pretty well over because all we're doing now is just finishing up the relationship. You're done. But so I'm not saying I fire someone for questioning their comp. I would fire someone for how they question their comp because it reveals where their head is. And sometimes if there's entitlement, that's come to mean that I am God's gift to you people and you haven't realized it. That's entitlement. And we don't have much time for that around here.
You know, it's funny, Tracy, Dave and I were talking earlier about humble, hungry, and smart. It's something I wrote about in the book called The Ideal Team Player. And if a person is humble, they don't come in there thinking that's entitlement to, and hungry, like, man, I want to work really hard. And they're emotionally intelligent, and they're going to come in and ask in the right way. Heck, that makes me want to go like, hey, I want to figure this out with you because I want you to feel good about what you're compensated, and I want to feel good that I'm being fair to you.
Yeah, and we'll do, let's do a comp plan. Let's do a comp study on your area, okay? You're a developer, you're a Dev 3. Let's make sure we're paying our Dev 3s all right. You might be revealing to us that, we're getting ready to have a bunch of turnover because we're underpaying the whole batch. And we got to look at this. So thank you, but let's look at that. But then we go, okay, the average pay for this position is Y, and that's, we're right about there. And so, anything you get above that with bonuses and with profit sharing is called gravy. It's called gravy on the biscuit, baby. So, eat the biscuit and be quiet. Let's go on. Let's get our work done. So, so how you ask it, if you come to me, the level of entitlement it reveals would matter. And then, because I don't hear you trying to be cheap with them, Tracy, but I hear you saying that occasionally you're running into one that no matter what you do, it's not good enough.
That's right.
Yeah. And if no matter what you do, it's not good enough, then that really just means they're done.
Agreed. I think that's great. Sound advice.
And the last thing I would want to say is that, so I love what Dave said. How are they asking and why are they asking? And if they're genuinely not sure, then you can welcome that question. You should not feel guilty, though, that you have to be defensive.
No, I'm not going to be defensive.
And you can go, hey, this is great. Maybe you're going to point something out. But if they don't point something out, and you can say, hey, so I feel better than ever. I'm paying you the right amount. And if they're not happy with that, then you know that.
But I have used the story on stage, and I've used it, I think, in the EntreLeadership book even. I did really have a guy walk into my office many years ago. I mean, we were probably a couple of hundred people at that point. And he said, well, I've got this degree and this degree and this degree. He had more degrees than a thermometer. I mean, he was a well-degreed guy. And he said, guys that have degrees like I have make a lot more money than I'm making here. And I said, well, that's because you work for a small business. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, at a small business, your raise is effective when you are. When you use all of that knowledge to bring revenue in here, we will share it with you. As long as you're strutting the hallway, throwing your sheepskins around, getting no work done, then you're not ever going to win here. Because this is not a bureaucracy. We're not a Fortune 500 company, and we don't really respect degrees or pedigrees. We respect results because that's what small business is dependent upon. We got to make payroll Friday, baby, and you're part of that. And so, yeah, I mean, you drag it, you kill it, drag it home, we'll share it with you.
That's right. Meritocracy, and it's about contribution.
Yeah.
Not a bureaucracy.
And, you know, and that there's nothing unfair or wrong about that or mean about that or greedy about that. There is a lot wrong with demanding pay based on, you know, my years of service. Well, if your years of service are serving, then you're going to get rewarded because you're going to be creating value for the organization. But if your years of service are you continue to show up and use some of our air.
Yeah, and let's just say, Tracy, there's a person that's complaining like this, and they are, and they really aren't doing it for the right reason. More often than not, that person leaves, and the morale of the rest of the team goes up because they realize that person's all in it for themselves. Now, I'm not saying the person asking you, because what you don't want to do is misunderstand. If they're coming to you with good intentions, honor them, love them, help them figure it out.
For sure.
But if they're not, and you feel like, oh, I know they're just being kind of selfish, but I don't want to lose them. No, take the risk of losing them because the rest of the team will probably do more.